Quiet evening when Officer Jake Reynolds pulled over a black SUV on a dimly lit street. The driver, a black woman in her mid-30s, rolled down her window calmly. "License and registration," Reynolds demanded, his tone dismissive. She handed over the documents without hesitation. "May I ask why I was stopped, officer?" "You were speeding," he said, though he hadn't actually clocked her speed, "and you failed to signal a lane change." The woman remained composed. "That's incorrect, officer. I was well within the speed limit and I used my signal." Reynolds narrowed his eyes, irritated by her confidence. He wasn't used to pushback, especially from people like her. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. She hesitated. "Am I being detained?" "Step out! Now!" he snapped, hand resting on his holstered weapon. With a measured breath, she complied. He immediately grabbed her wrist, twisting it behind her back. "Resisting arrest, huh? That's another charge," he sneered as he cuffed her. She said nothing, allowing him to dig his own grave. "The false charges." As the woman stood in handcuffs, Officer Reynolds pulled out his radio. "Suspect apprehended. Resisting arrest, possible concealed weapon," he reported. The woman raised an eyebrow. "That's not true," she said evenly. Reynolds smirked. "Yeah? Tell it to the judge." He shoved her into the back of his cruiser, ignoring the small smirk that briefly crossed her lips. He had no idea who she really was, and she wasn't going to tell him. At the station, Reynolds wrote his report, fabricating details: speeding over 15 miles per hour above the limit, failure to signal lane change, resisting arrest, possible concealed weapon. It was an airtight case, or so he thought. The courtroom buzzed with quiet murmurs as Officer Reynolds took the stand. He sat tall, confident, knowing that in most cases like this, his word was enough. The defendant was driving recklessly, failed to signal a lane change, and when I pulled her over, she became aggressive and non-compliant, Reynolds testified. She resisted arrest, and I had reason to believe she was carrying a concealed weapon. The prosecutor nodded approvingly. Then, the defense attorney stood up. "Officer Reynolds, are you certain about these claims?" "Absolutely," Reynolds replied smugly. The attorney glanced at the defendant, who remained silent, watching everything unfold with an unreadable expression. "Good," the lawyer said, "because now we're going to review some evidence." Reynolds frowned. "Evidence? That wasn't supposed to happen." The woman finally lifted her chin slightly, her gaze locking onto his. She still hadn't said a word, but something about her presence unsettled him. "At 4, the big reveal." The defense attorney took a deep breath, then turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we would like to present new evidence, body cam footage from Officer Reynolds' patrol vehicle." Reynolds' smug expression wavered. "That footage isn't necessary," he said quickly. The judge frowned. "Let's see it." The courtroom lights dimmed as the footage played on the large screen. It clearly showed the woman signaling her lane change, driving within the speed limit, and remaining calm during the stop. There was no aggression, no resisting, just a composed woman complying with orders while Reynolds escalated the situation. The murmurs in the courtroom grew louder. "Officer Reynolds," the attorney said, pausing for effect, "did you know that my client is a high-ranking Navy SEAL?" A stunned silence filled the room. Reynolds' face paled. He had assumed she was just another civilian, someone who wouldn't fight back, someone who wouldn't have the discipline or resources to expose him. The woman finally spoke for the first time. Her voice was firm but calm. "I have served my country for over a decade. I have undergone the most grueling training imaginable. I have faced enemies overseas. But the greatest threat I've faced, corrupt officers who think they can manipulate the system for their own gain." The judge turned to Reynolds, his expression dark. "Officer, do you have anything to say for yourself?" Reynolds opened his mouth, but no words came out. His panic was silent, except for the faint hum of the paused body cam footage. Officer Reynolds' face was drained of color as the undeniable truth played out on the screen. "You lied under oath, Officer Reynolds," the defense attorney stated firmly, "and you falsely accused my client of resisting arrest and carrying a weapon." "Aye," Reynolds started, but his voice faltered. He glanced at the judge, whose expression was unreadable. "You told the court she was aggressive," the attorney continued, stepping closer. "Yet the footage shows she complied every step of the way. How do you explain that?" Reynolds swallowed hard. Maybe the footage is incomplete, he muttered weakly. A scoff echoed from the audience. The judge leaned forward, his voice sharp. Officer Reynolds, do you realize what this means? Perjury, false arrest, abuse of power. Reynolds fidgeted in his seat, sweat forming on his brow. Meanwhile, the woman at the defense table remained still. Her training had taught her patience. She had been through war zones. This was nothing. Reynolds' confidence had shattered. He wasn't the one in control anymore. Judge's verdict. The judge's gavel struck the bench, demanding silence. His gaze locked onto Officer Reynolds. This court does not tolerate perjury, especially from those sworn to uphold the law, he said sternly. Officer Reynolds, you have been caught lying under oath, fabricating charges and violating the rights of an innocent citizen. Reynolds shifted uncomfortably. His mouth opened, but no excuse came out. The judge turned to the defense attorney. All charges against the defendant are hereby dismissed. A wave of relief spread through the courtroom, except for Reynolds. But that's not all, the judge continued, looking back at the officer. This court is recommending an immediate investigation into your conduct. You may face criminal charges and disciplinary action from your department. Gasps rippled through the audience. Reynolds' face burned red. This wasn't how things were supposed to go. He was supposed to win. Meanwhile, the Navy SEAL stood up, her movements precise, disciplined. She turned to the officer, giving him a single look, one that told him everything. She wasn't just any woman, and she was never afraid of him. The truth now clear, Michelle's name is completely exonerated. She feels a deep sense of relief, not just for herself, but for the people who believed in her. In a quiet, powerful moment, she returns to her Navy SEAL unit, where her fellow soldiers acknowledge her bravery, not just in the field, but in standing up for what is right. Officer Brooks, on the other hand, faces disciplinary action and possible career-ending consequences as the truth about his actions is fully revealed. Michelle reflects on the emotional toll the case took on her, but remains proud of her ability to remain calm, composed, and unwavering in the face of adversity. The case becomes a symbol of the importance of integrity, the dangers of bias and false assumptions, and the need for greater accountability within institutions, especially in law enforcement. Michelle moves forward with even greater resolve, knowing her commitment to truth and service is unshaken, and her strength is a beacon for others facing similar struggles. Would you like me to expand or refine any part? 1. Michelle's victory. With her name cleared and the lies exposed, Michelle feels a deep sense of relief, but also a renewed sense of pride in her integrity and strength. 2. The impact on the courtroom. The courtroom is left in silence after the verdict, with the implications of the case sinking in. The truth has triumphed, but there's an underlying sense of injustice about how things could have gone differently if not for her resilience. Michelle's return to duty. Michelle is warmly welcomed back to her Navy SEAL unit, her fellow SEALs recognizing her for not only her military prowess, but her moral courage in exposing the lies. 4. Officer Brooks' fall from grace. Officer Brooks is suspended, with an investigation launched into his prior misconduct and biases. His career is now in jeopardy, and his credibility is shattered. 5. Public reaction. The case catches national attention, and many are outraged by the false accusation. People begin questioning the systemic issues within law enforcement and the military that allowed this to happen. 6. Michelle's personal growth. The ordeal changes Michelle. Though she's always been tough, she becomes more reflective on the intersection of race, gender, and power. She channels her experiences into becoming a mentor for others in her unit, especially young women and minorities. 7. The role of the legal system. The case serves as a powerful reminder of the importance of the justice system in holding individuals accountable, not just in the courtroom, but within law enforcement. 8. A call for change. The case sparks a broader discussion about the need for reforms in police training, military interactions with civilians, and the biases that can influence judgment, even in situations that should be straightforward. 9. Looking ahead. In the final scenes, Michelle reflects on how much she's overcome, knowing the journey ahead won't always be easy, but reaffirming her commitment to serving her country and fighting for justice, both within her unit and in society at large. Expanded version of Point 9. Ix, looking ahead. Michelle's reflection. In a quiet, introspective moment, Michelle stands on a rooftop or in a peaceful setting, reflecting on everything that has transpired. She realizes that this trial was not just about defending herself, but about standing up for the larger values she holds dear: truth, justice, and the need for systemic change. Commitment to the future. She understands that the battle for equality, fairness, and accountability doesn't end with one case. Though the trial is over, Michelle is more determined than ever to use her position in the military and her platform to advocate for justice, particularly when it comes to issues of racial and gender bias. Mentorship role. As Michelle returns to active duty, she takes on a new role as a mentor, helping younger soldiers, especially women and minorities, navigate their own challenges. She teaches them the value of staying calm under pressure, remaining true to their principles, and always fighting for what is right, no matter the odds. A broader impact, Michelle's case becomes a powerful example for others facing similar struggles. Her story is shared widely as a symbol of resilience against false accusations and institutional injustice. It ignites conversations across communities, both military and civilian, about how the systems of power can better protect and support those they serve. Ongoing change. The public reaction to the case, coupled with the investigation into Officer Brooks' past, leads to calls for reforms in law enforcement and military practices. Michelle finds herself involved in discussions and initiatives aimed at making lasting change, understanding that while her fight was personal, the implications are much larger. Looking forward with hope. As Michelle stands at the threshold of a new chapter, she's motivated by the knowledge that every fight for justice is a step toward a more equitable future. Despite the challenges ahead, she moves forward with confidence, knowing she's part of something much bigger than herself. Does this